Stay tuned for the Joan Quinn Profiles. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, LA Style, and Detour magazines, Joan covered the social set, the Hollywood hotshots, the international art scene, the mysteries of food, the excitement of travel, and the fabulous world of fashion. Joan continues to find creative people on the cutting edge who make things happen. Here's Joan Agajanian Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Waiting to be profiled is senior drama critic for The New Yorker, John Lahr, and actress Diane Cary. John Lahr is a playwright, a critic, a producer, a journalist. He's written adaptations of plays which were performed at the Royal National Theatre in London, the Royal Exchange in Manchester, and right here at home on the Mark Taper Theatre. He won lots of awards, but twice he received the Nathan Award for Dramatic Writing and twice the ASCAP Taylor Award for Excellence in Writing About Music. When he was a youngster, he watched his father, comedian Bert Lahr, from the backstage wings of the theater. How did those early days influence your career?
Well, it turns out that they influenced him a lot, although at the time it was just life. But the real influence is that Dad was two people. On stage, he was magnificent and authoritative and energized, and the minute he hit the wings and off the stage, he deflated like a tire. And that was confusing because he went from being very powerful to being bewildered and sort of a lost soul, a lovely lost soul, but nonetheless a lost soul. And so the discrepancy between those two poles is something that is a mystery to me, that I'm always in my profiles trying to fathom, that in order, these people who have great talent are operating out of something they need desperately to express, which is usually a sort of a shadow of some sort. And what I try to find, and to get them to talk about or exhibit, is that thing out of which they create the wonderful things that they do.
Well, finally, in the end, as the son of the Cowardly Lion, you wrote about your father.
Yes, it was my first book.
Is that the notes? So it obviously, all this thinking that you were doing and transferring into your career started like that.
Well, you know, it struck me as odd, and I've seen it in a lot of people that I profile. These people are huge, defining stars in their era, and enormous reams are written about them, but nothing that was written about my father came anywhere near exploring what he was.
But nobody knew.
Well,
you knew.
Well, yeah, but why didn't it? And when I started to read, the literature, I started to want more from the books than I was getting. So I wrote one, and I tried to do the kind of thing I was looking for. And it seemed that because that book, which the Notes on a Cowardly Lion, was reviewed on the front page of the New York Times, it made my name at a young age.
So it was Notes on the Cowardly Lion.
Notes on the Cowardly Lion. And it's now 30 years on. The book is still in print. And what I was able to do for my dad, it was interesting. He gave me a subject that I could write, and I gave him a certain longevity after his death.
Alive.
So we were, in the end, he was a very unreachable guy. The only way I could find out about him was to write about him. He was a lovely guy, but sort of absent. And so in doing that, I sort of mourned him in life. And it was good. It made me feel very good that I was able to do something for this guy who loomed so large in the public imagination, you know?
Well, when you talk about your profiles and you talk about the depth that you went to with your father, which is very difficult for a writer to do because it takes a lot of time.
Yes.
And in this John Lahr Honky Tonk Parade, there's a series of, I call them mini biographies.
That's what they are.
And each one has as much depth. I just love reading them. I love reading your work. The way, I guess it's just what you explained. Everything is so clear, and everything is so about the person.
Well, that is the idea. It's a portrait. It's a pen portrait.
Right. That's what it looks like.
And you know, these portraits operate just like good tailoring. The more the sittings, the better the fit.
Maybe that's it. One of your other stories in here is about Barry Humphries.
Yes.
And it's long. They're really long.
Well, that one is that was the first one I ever wrote in the New Yorker. It was 23,000 words long. And that's the 23,000 words.
How do you write so much?
Well, I'm a professional writer.
But I mean, do you use tapes?
Well, you know, when I do a profile, that was exceptionally long, and that turned into a book. I stayed backstage with them for 6 weeks at the Drury Lane in England, and my goal was to just put down a record of a man, a comedian, who is an extraordinary human being and an extraordinary clown, and to do the thing I was talking about, to be backstage and watch this ordinary civilian turn into this extraordinary, iconic comic figure, Dame Edna Everage. But when I do a New Yorker profile, they take about 4 months.
I was going to say.
And at the end of it, I have a dossier of interviews, not just with the subject, but with all the sort of supporting cast, his family, his friends, whatever I need to do to tell his story. And, you know, that is what gives you, like in a portrait, it's not just the picture of the person, it's the depth and texture and where the person is situated and posed in the painting. It's the same deal, except it's with words.
Except it's weird. What is your physical way you do it?
Oh, computer.
Computer.
Always? Before I write, I keep a notebook, and it's like making a stew. Every observation, if there's a cartoon or a review or anything, I just number it and paste it in, and just keep it there and add to it. I might have in a profile, say, of Tony Kushner or Lawrence Fishburne, I might have 30 or 40 notations, and when I come to write the profile, I don't refer to it regularly, but when I look back, I make sure after I've written the piece, I read over my notes, and I would say 2/3 of the things that I've written in my notebook are in the piece.
You've covered it.
Yeah.
Because what you do is you look at it from all different angles. There's so many angles that are included.
That's right, but I'm looking to interpret the person, and my view is that every star, and all these people, the thing that they have in common is they're huge stars. The star himself or herself is their greatest invention, much greater than their whatever roles that they're in. And therefore, I interpret them as a metaphor. They are the story.
I see. And it all comes through. In 1992, you went to the New Yorker as the senior
drama critic.
You'd written for the Village Voice, and you'd written for different
Evergreen Review, yeah.
Different publications.
Sure.
But were you living in New York when you became?
No, at the time, I'm twice married. My late wife was English, and the success of Notes gave me enough courage to write a novel. I never thought I was going to be more than just a regular newspaper journalist, and that novel was also a bestseller. And I needed to leave America. I wanted to have a body of work. I wanted to do the work, and I found one of my subjects is celebrity and fame, and one of the dilemmas of the momentum of celebrity is that at a certain speed all things disintegrate. And therefore, I had to vaccinate myself from ambition. I had to move away. And living in England accomplished two things. It allowed me to have an ordinary life and live in an ordinary way, and it also allowed me to see what it was like to be in a community where the shadow of my father, which was a large and beloved shadow, which I enjoyed. I wasn't oppressed by it at all. But I found, much to my chagrin, I think, that I rather relied on it more than I thought.
Oh, so you were able to
So it allowed me to become myself, and therefore to find my own voice.
But in finding your voice, here you are living in England, You're writing for a New Yorker, the New Yorker
Now, I was by now.
Oh.
There was, I moved to England in 1971.
Oh, but at
so
this
now,
period, 20 years later.
20 years later,
Yeah.
I get the opportunity, the good luck to, which was everything to me to move to the New Yorker because I learned so much there.
Were you writing these mini biographies for the New Yorker or shorter pieces?
When I moved, I was writing books up until the time I got to the New Yorker, and then at the New Yorker, after my first year of reviewing, I started to write theater profiles, which is a great tradition in the theater. The New Yorker has a very special, rich contribution to American theater because all its drama critics, almost all, have written for the theater or for the entertainment industry. Herman Mankiewicz, the first drama critic, wrote Citizen Kane. The second one, Charles Brackett, wrote Sunset Boulevard. Dorothy Parker wrote lyrics, and of course Kenneth Tynan famously produced O Calcutta. And a couple of years ago, I wrote a play with Elaine Stritch called Elaine Stritch at Liberty.
I was just going to bring that up. It wasn't.
I feel really proud to have carried that tradition on. But no magazine in the history of Western civilization has contributed more to the theater. Woody Allen, say, also.
Yes.
S.J. Perelman, Benchley, O'Hara, it just goes on and on.
But how do you do it from London? You have to be with those people in New York.
In the New York, I do. In the New Yorker, I have to be there. And what I do is the New Yorker flies me over for 2 weeks of every month.
And you see plays?
I see the plays, and I have an office at the magazine, and I work. And I think my proudest accomplishment is to have raised my son, to have been there with him and his growing up. And of course, when the son is grown and on his own to a degree, it's nice to, as it were, put four on the floor and really go and write. And so there's a lot of time to write, which is good.
Do the pieces that you write for the New Yorker, small profiles, dramatic profiles, turn into larger pieces like these?
No, usually that's what I want to do with them. If I spent 4 months, there are offers. I wrote a piece. Roseanne wanted me to write her book, but I didn't want to do that. I wrote the one that was turned into a larger book. I wrote a profile of Frank Sinatra, which I of course had to cut things down, and they asked me would I add some stuff, and they would publish it as a picture book, and that was a successful book.
I don't want to deviate from that, but I want to also say that Elaine Stritch got a Tony for that.
As did I.
As did you.
Yeah.
So congratulations. I saw that in New York.
And I'm very proud because I am the only critic in the 58-year history of the award to ever win a Tony.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. So it's good. It's good for me because I think that people have the impression that if you write criticism, it's because you can't do it. And it's a part of the authority of the New Yorker is that they generally hire people to be drama critics who actually know the trade.
How do you pick the biographies that you've done?
Well, it's a kind of it's a collective decision led by my enthusiasm, but ultimately ruled over by the editor's choice. Because
Oh, it is.
But I would always want to write about Dame Edna or Billy Connolly or Fishburne or Tony Kushner or Cole Porter. But sometimes they come up with people,
Ideas.
and then I'll say that's great. I'll do that tomorrow.
Oh, and then you start like a 4-month process or a shorter process?
When the process first begins with writing to the potential, I want to say client, potential subject. And what I say always to them is, don't do this. It's a waste of your time and mine if you don't, because it takes 4 months, and it's a collaboration.
Yes.
And unless you want this, don't do it, because I want you to have a fine portrait, but I also have to do my thing.
And you have
it's
to be
written.
with them.
It's not typed, it's written.
Yeah.
And so you have to get that collaboration, and if they take the challenge, then over the period of time, you get answers in proportion to the trust that's built up with the person, so that someone like Mike Nichols talks to me in ways I know that, because I have to read everything that's been written about these people before I write, that they're telling me things that you will not find anywhere else.
No, and you also know that they're saying that what you read is not really me.
I'm looking for, and I'm looking to interpret them. And, people either don't want that at all. Mel Brooks who had been profiled by Time, and I asked him if he'd be profiled again after the producers, and he called me up and in his gruff voice he said, "John, I love what you do, but I don't want you doing it to me." and so I don't. Fine, that's a good and honest answer.
Yeah.
But if they want it, then it's very. If they'll collaborate, you can get to a very interesting place because people essentially want to see what you see in them.
That's true.
Because
it's like a portrait.
Yes, and because in a way, talent is even mysterious. It's certainly mysterious to audiences, but it's also mysterious to the people who have it. How did they get it?
Yeah.
Can they lose it? Why? What is it? And so that I think identity actually requires two people. It's like the mother and the child. The child learns who it is through the kind of gaze of the other.
Yeah.
And to that extent, I think I am there to try to see them with the point, with the intention of keeping them honorably in the conversation about the culture, because so much of modern journalism is about lifestyle and scandal, and not about what these people actually do and are about. And they are technicians of the spirit.
That's why it's so great to read Honky Tonk Parade.
There you go.
Because you really see all that. We have about 1 minute left, but tell me about Paul Davis really quickly, the artist.
Paul Davis and I worked in Every Green Review in the 60s. I love it. He's the great graphic artist of our time. He did the famous Che Guevara poster. And I have it in my contract for all my books that he designed my books for this reason. You change publishers, but all my books, no matter who I change, I sleep around, but all the books have a look. And they generate visually the kind of excitement and joy that I hope I provide inside. In this case, I hope that my book is as good as the cover.
I love his work.
It's handwritten.
And I've known his work for a long time, and that's one more great thing.
You know, it's handicraft.
Yes.
And I'm handicraft. It's handcrafted, this thing.
It's perfect. John Lahr, thank you so much for coming to visit with us today.
I enjoyed it.
And thanks for watching this part of the show. We'll be right back with Diane Cary. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome back to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Diane Cary was born and raised in Westchester, New York. She graduated from the University of Denver with a Bachelor of Arts in Theater. Diane, you spent 6 years at the Shakespeare Festival in New York. What did you do?
Well, that's where I started acting, really. It was my training ground. It was a festival that ran in the summers, and mainly students who were high school and college. So it was my early training. I started when I was 14, and every summer the festival would rehearse and perform 5 Shakespeare plays, and they would cast in some of the leads professional actors from New York. So the young actors like myself got an opportunity to work with seasoned professionals.
Oh, you
and,
did?
Yes, and I did many plays. Over 6 years, I probably did 8 productions where I had the lead. As a young actress, and that was so.
So, but obviously you wanted to be an actress when you were in high school.
Yes.
Was that your desire?
Yes, it was. Yeah, and I continued, and during the winters I did theater in high school. And
from Denver, did you go to New York or to L.A.?
From Denver, I came to LA. Yes.
You didn't, why didn't you go to New York? Oh, you'd already had your New York training.
Well, I had some also, even in high school and in the college years in summer, I did some off Broadway in New York. But my husband, at the time in college, got into UCLA grad school as a writer. Oh. So we came out here together. And I knew it was either New York or LA.
Well, that's what I mean. Yeah. Where are you going to go?
One coast or the other, yeah. So that decision was made for me. And I thought, well, why not? I'll give it a whirl.
But when you came out, you were in a lot of TV series.
Yeah, not right away. I spent a year or two of waitressing in Marina del Rey.
Did you? Were you taking lessons along the way, classes?
Well, I was actually involved in theater companies.
Were you?
I was working a lot with East West Players. I was at the time when they were on Santa Monica, and I was in the Groundlings, and I was in a sketch comedy group, and I was
so
just
you were
open
working.
auditioning, and I was studying film because I'd had most of my training with stage.
But were you a regular in any of the TV series?
Yeah, I started out doing small roles, movies of the week, and that sort of thing, and then I got my first regular on V, which was for Warner Brothers, and that was in the early 80s, I think. And I was a series regular on that, the pilot and the mini-series. So I worked for 2 years.
Did that catapult you into bigger and better things, into film? Or?
Yeah, it got my name known within the insiders, and I started to get more guest stars on television shows. And I did do El Norte right around that same time.
Yes, you were in feature films, Heart Condition, which was done by whom?
That was New Line, New Line Cinema.
And then
yes, and Denzel Washington and Bob Hoskins were in that.
And El Norte got an Oscar nomination.
That's right.
And whose film was that?
Gregory Nava.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So did he direct it or just write it?
He wrote it and directed it. It was mostly shot in Mexico. And then there was a small segment shot in LA.
Did you go on location?
Well, no, it was actually a very scary experience. I shot all my scenes at 3 in the morning wearing 6-inch heel boots with
what
no
were
stand-in.
you?
So, well, no, I was a businesswoman from Chicago, but they needed me to wear heels because of the terrain. I was in a parking lot in an area and they didn't have apple boxes. It was. I thought this was either going to be the most horrible film I'd ever been in, but I loved the script. But it was done, very low budget, and then it turned out to be this fabulous. It was originally shot to be, I think, a movie of the week, and then PBS saw it, and immediately it was released as a feature.
Well, how was it working with the director?
It was great. Gregory Nava was amazing, and he chose really good actors. I love the young man that plays the lead, the Mexican-American actor was just darling, and it was great, except for the 3 in the morning part, which was very hard to try to...
You're in a lot of stage productions now. You've been on the stage a lot. And one of the plays that you were in is called Van Lutz.
Yes, Von Lutz.
And it's at the Lillian Theater.
At the Lillian Theater, yeah.
Tell me about it.
Well, we ran for 6 weeks. It's a new play, a world premiere of a play. We're reopening in January. It was written by Dennis Miles.
He's a playwright?
Yes, a well-known LA playwright, Cuban-American.
Oh, he is?
Yes, but his work has been done a lot at Theater of Note, which is an equity waiver company in Hollywood. And actually, this is the first time one of his plays has been done outside of Theater of Note, I believe.
Who's directing it?
It was directed by John Lawrence Rivera, who is the head of Playwrights Arena, a wonderful director.
But the playwright doesn't have a Cuban name.
No, he doesn't. He changed his name.
Oh, I see.
He said it was difficult to pronounce, and he changed it many years ago.
I wondered because when I just saw a play off Broadway by a Cuban playwright, and it was called Kissing Fidel, and it seemed to me that it's about the same kind of dysfunctional family that Van Lutz is. So tell me about that.
Well, Von Lutz is about
everything.
Yes, the style is Noel Coward. It's upper crust, glitz, sort of social behavior, but the people are deeply dysfunctional and behaving very badly all through the play, much like Edward Albee. It's got shades of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, and even the goat, who is Sylvia.
What do you play?
I'm the mother. I'm the grande dame mother, the
And
alcoholic.
So you must be tough.
Yes, I'm the ex-actress who gave it up because her husband flipped out and had a nervous breakdown and raised these 2 children. And one of they're twins, and one of them is mentally challenged. And it's the story of this family in Los Angeles, and they speak very, beautiful English because they learned English in Argentina from British, upper crust, nannies. And so there's this sort of gloss and as I say, upper crust kind of feeling to the people, but everything underneath is just dark and dirty.
When something like this happens and it starts and it has a wonderful run, and then you take a hiatus and it was so good, you go back and you go back on stage again. Are there any thoughts of New York or expanding to larger theaters or?
Yes, absolutely. I think that there's this opportunity because the play closed right when the buzz was starting to happen, and the playwright, after seeing it, is doing a revision, which is always great because it's a new play.
Does that mean what is?
He's just making some changes, perhaps making it shorter. We opted to do it in one without an intermission, and so he's going to do some tightening of the script and. Yes, we do. We hope it might move on to an equity house, which is happening more in Los Angeles with smaller theater.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of the new complexion of LA theater.
Well, theater's so great here, and people don't realize how good it is or how much there is. I should say there's a lot.
Oh, a lot.
And maybe all of it's not good, but it's experimental, and there's so much going on.
There's so much edgy stuff. They take chances here, and
I know.
They're shorter runs than New York, and of course it's way less. The budgets are way smaller.
Have you ever thought of doing a one-person play about your own story?
Well, I did do a little stand-up when I was in the Groundlings. Yeah, very briefly. It was actually the most frightened I've ever been in my life, but the most powerful I ever felt on stage.
How long would that be? At the Groundlings.
Oh, how long did I do it?
Yeah.
I just.
No, how many minutes was it?
Oh, it was 5 minutes. 5 minutes.
But how could you stand on stage for an hour and a half?
Yeah.
And talk about yourself?
Well, I don't know. It's an interesting question. I probably could. I'm a talker.
they say, when some actors go, what do you mean? All by ourselves on stage? That's what we long for.
That's it. An acting coach said to me, if you like to talk, you like to act.
Yeah, but I wondered because a lot of people use that one-person play as a showcase. So the Groundlings, you were a stand-up. But if you're on stage, you have to be directed. And
well, that was my one experience with the sketch comedy kind of stand-up thing, and I did it, for 2 years, and it was a great training. It was interesting. It helped me with timing and just being daring and doing, wacky things. And the improv part of it was really great. But it wasn't really my métier.
No, are you still taking classes and?
Well, I study always.
Do you?
I was with Milton Katselis in his professional class for many, many years.
Milton.
Yes, wonderful, wonderful coach.
Fabulous.
And most recently with Charlie Lawton, who is a brilliant Stanislavski coach. And teaches pure Stanislavski, relaxation and scene study from the point of view of just all about the breathing and relaxation.
And you learn something new every time you go in?
Oh, indeed.
Yes.
It's unending.
Yeah.
That's what's so wonderful about it. It's just there's no end to the learning and new experiences and changing. It's just amazing.
Have you written?
I have. I've written some television screenplays and a couple of short films that were done as not features, but festival films, 2 shorts. And I wrote 2 episodes of an episodic show that was being shot in Canada that were actually produced.
Oh, good for you.
A show called Forever Night. But you asked me if I like to talk. I love to talk. I love people. I'm not fond of sitting alone at a computer, which is what writing makes you do. So.
Oh, that's the difference.
I tried it, but less forced.
Well, I'm glad you were here to talk for us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching the Joan Quinn Profiles, and thanks to Diane Cary. Keep writing to 777 South Figueroa, Los Angeles 90017. See you next time on the Joan Quinn Profiles.